As Texas continues to mourn and North Carolina tries to recover from their devastating flash floods, this report reveals the Secretary of Homeland Security trying to cover Trump's butt, Anderson Cooper exposing their massive blunder, and the governor of North Carolina delivering a scathing rebuke to why Trump's deeply flawed effort to gut federal responses is its own disaster. And I have it all for you in this next episode of
Trending.
Let's begin with Trump's desire to dismantle FEMA and let states twist in the wind when disasters hit, and Kristie Noem's illogical effort in supporting his disastrous plan on the Fox propaganda channel.
The reality is that Trump doesn't think natural disasters should be his problem at all. I mean, from the very first week of his new term, Trump has proposed getting rid of FEMA altogether, just eliminating it. Because in Trump's view, the federal government shouldn't have to deal with emergencies. That task should be left to the states. And as he sees it, the only role he should really play here is being the point person on whether states get anything from the federal government at all. He loves to have that power.
As a federal government, we'll give them recommendations and support on what they could do, what other cities do. That's our role. And specifically with FEMA is to always come in when there is a situation like this, that we don't make the decisions for the local communities. We shouldn't make the decisions for the states because every state is different. Every town is different. What they need for sirens or sound alerts might be different based on their topography, on how the city is laid out. So we will give them recommendations and advice.
CNN is basically got a report accusing you of slowing the process. Yeah. Would you like to respond to that?
Well, there you go. Fake news. CNN again is absolutely trash what they are doing.
CNN did what that caused Noem to trot out that tired fake news cliche? Those two words that usually signal that something pointed has hit its mark? Have a listen, and then I'll share the governor of North Carolina's call for Trump to find sanity when calamity strikes.
So according to 4 officials inside FEMA, that federal response may not have been as fast as it might have been. They say that a new rule that any expenditure over $100,000 needed sign-off from Secretary Noem slowed the federal response. These sources tell us that FEMA's deployment of urban search and rescue teams, which are typically deployed in anticipation they might be needed, instead was delayed until Monday, 3 days after the flood. Now, a source also tells us that a request Texas made for FEMA aerial imagery to aid in the search was also delayed, waiting for Secretary Noem's approval. Now, additionally, multiple FEMA officials say that they were taken aback by the agency's relatively limited response in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. CNN has reached out to FEMA for comment. So far, no reply from the agency. However, a DHS spokeswoman more generally told CNN that FEMA is, in her words, quote, shifting from bloated DC-centric dead weight to a lean deployable disaster force that empowers state actors to provide relief for their citizens.
Of course, everyone on Team Trump will deny responsibility when things go south, and they will stick to the playbook and not only refuse to acknowledge mistakes, but they will go on the offensive and attack critics. But what if there was an objective third party who intimately understands the difference between state and federal resources when it comes to disasters? Someone who wants life-saving action, not a system that requires groveling to the president. Enter North Carolina Governor Josh Stein.
You know, the Trump administration wants to retool FEMA, maybe get rid of it, maybe put some of this responsibility back on the states. Does that work? Can the state handle that?
It depends on the scale of the storm. And North Carolina is a bigger state than most, so we have a pretty sophisticated emergency response team. But here's the thing, we don't get a huge storm every year. The country does. It doesn't make sense for each state to have a fully staffed emergency response team because they may not have a storm for 5 years or 10 years. But we know the country will. So let's have that expertise in the federal government. And also the resources, we as a state cannot bear the cost of recovery, $60 billion. Only the federal government can do that. We need more help. I have an $11.5 billion request before Congress and the administration that I eagerly hope that they fund soon.
I grew up in a small town in Ohio, not too far from East Palestine, the site of the toxic train spill disaster. Like my hometown, they have a volunteer fire department. So what if Noem was in charge then, and instead of swinging into action, told the fire chief, we'll give you recommendations and support? And now let's consider Trump's hypocrisy. Recently in Los Angeles, a city with one of the largest police forces in the nation, there were destructive protests that covered just a couple of city blocks. Trump not only sent in the National Guard, but he sent in the Marines to usurp the locals trained in riot control because it fulfilled his strongman show of force fantasy. Trump's desire to neuter FEMA and his actions in Los Angeles have a common denominator: power. On one hand, he will use things like the military and the Department of Justice to get those who don't fall into line to fear his might. And on the other hand, he wants to bring institutions like FEMA in countries like Ukraine to their knees. He wants those who don't worship him to grovel and beg for scraps from him. Donald Trump is a fragile tyrant, but it goes much deeper than just a character flaw. When delays happen because FEMA isn't answering the call with their trained professionals and abundant resources, or the services are no longer there, lives will be lost. And we can be certain that with every tragic death will come another denial per the Trump playbook. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching. Please comment below, and let's continue to occupy democracy together.